Hello everybody, welcome to the Chess Harbor. My name is Raf and today I want to continue our series on the Trompowsky opening. So we're looking at positions starting with the move d4, knight to f6, bishop to g5, the Trompowsky attack, avoiding all the King's Indian, Benoni, Grunfeld, other kind of defenses against the Indian. We're playing bishop to g4 with a very direct threat to take on the knight and get kind of unusual positions which we know better than our opponents. And today we're going to look at the position with the move e6. Last time we looked at positions with knight e4, and now let's take a look at e6, which is the third most played move. It's a very solid move, it just defends this knight. So now that we can no longer take and ruin black's structure. It's one of the better ways for black to play actually. It's very solid. We got two main ways to play against this. The first move that I prefer is the move e4. It's a very direct move. Play e4 with the idea of playing e5 and just trying to win the knight. And black has to be precise against this. There's only two moves, h6 or bishop to e7. Otherwise black is going to lose material. And bishop to e7 is the move that we're going to see in most of the games. It's if you look at the database at levels about under 2200 ELO, the move is going to be played about 70% of the times. If you're going above the 2200 ELO, the move is going to be played way less and the move h6 is going to be more popular. Let's take a look at both moves. h6 is the best move. The reason why is that we only have one choice. We have to take. If we move back our bishop, black can play g5 and now take our pawn on e4. If we move our bishop, let's say, to f4 or e3, we immediately lose the pawn on e4. So we'd have a kind of gambit. Yeah, that's really not what you want. There is no compensation for the pawn. So after move h6, we have to give up our bishop. Black can now take back with the queen. That was the whole point of playing e6. And we immediately see why this variation is called the big center variation, is because white gives up the bishop but has a very strong center. We have the nice pawns on d4, e4. We're going to see in one of the example games, a game from Duda against Anishgiri, where he shows that the center is quite valuable, and in general, if the game opens up, these two bishops are going to become more valuable than the center is. But if we can keep our center intact, the knights can really flourish. We'll see a nice game from Duda later. Let's first take a look at the move bishop to e7. So in this variation, bishop to e7, we have to continue with our threat. We go for the move e5 because our e4 pawn was now hanging and black has to move the knight. Usually they're going to go to d5. And now the bishops have a stare down. We're going to trade the bishop. And usually black takes back with the queen. Black can also take back with the knight, but in general we immediately see our compensation for the bishop. So we give up the bishop for no structural damage, but we have strong pawns, we have nice control. This pawn gives us a lot of space and kind of crams black. It's a little bit reminiscent of a French defense, a French advance, to be more precise, and that is quite a decent opening for white, because of the attacking chances that our pawn gives us. And that's exactly what we're going to see in some of these games, is that we get some attacking chances and we're going to try and really squish black. But the most important thing that you can see in this variation specifically is that we can kind of immediately abuse the knight and play the move c4, attacking this knight, and the knight has no normal natural retreating square to f6. So the knight either has to go forward or has to go backwards to a spot where it's not really strong anymore. And that's what we see in the first example game. So this is a game I played as a rapid game, about 2000 ELO. I played a move c4 and my opponent goes for the move queen to b4 check. It forks the b2 pawn and the king, so there is only one defensive idea here, that's queen to d2. My opponent traded the queens and I took back with the knight. I want to mention that king takes on d2 is actually entirely possible in this position. The queens are off the board, we have really nice protection in front of our king with these big pawns, and the king is actually quite strong on c3 or d3. So actually king d2 was the best move, and then the knight can come to the natural square on c3. I played, oh, excuse me, that's a mistake. The knight can actually come to c3, but now it comes to d2, which is also okay, but this move comes with tempo now. Knight to b4, I have to play king d1 anyway to protect against the fork. And now we'll see that this center is actually quite strong. So knight to c6, knight to f3, we have to develop, and my opponent claims some space on the queen side with a5. I kick away the knight goes back to a6, bishop to d3, d6, and rook e1. So ideally this pawn wants to be replaced with either another pawn or with a knight. D takes on e5, and d takes on e5. So we want to keep our space advantage. You see this pawn is very annoying, it keeps black a little bit cramped. My opponent plays knight to c5, hitting my bishop. My bishop goes to e4. I want to play it over here because now I can maybe potentially ruin his structure on the queen side, but if he takes, I take back with my knight, and my knight is ready to either jump into c5 or maybe sometimes into d6 if he ever moves his pawn. So that's just a nice move, improving my pieces. He takes, take back with the knight, b6. He doesn't want to put his bishop there, he wants to put his bishop probably here to target my pawn, but now king to c2. Step my king out of the center, I can claim the d-file now, and if he were to harass my pawns, I can very easily protect my pawns with moves like king c3 or b3. He castles, rook to a d1, bishop to a6, king to c3, so we're all very compact. These knights are really good. The pawn is still carving out some territory. If he ever wants to play f6, I can just take, and then we're playing against these two hanging pawns. So that's nice. We can see that the center really gives us a nice control in this game. Rook f to d1, rook f to d8, sorry, b3, a4, b4. So this move actually made my queenside pawns only stronger. Now I have the threat of forking here, but also the threat of just pushing on. Bishop to b7, and now c5. Really nice. Utilizing my knight, getting into the game, puts a lot of pressure on my opponent, and my opponent goes immediately wrong here. He takes, knight takes on c5, rook takes on d1, rook takes on d1, bishop to c8, and a very nice way to finish the game here. I'll give you a couple of seconds to pause the video. How did I win the game? b5 wins on the spot. The opponent actually can't move the knight. He has to give up a tremendous amount of material to survive here, but he just played knight to e7, which leads to an immediate checkmate on the back rank. So a very fast win in this game. You quickly see that after the exchanges come and the knight is stuck on d5, white is going to get this very big center with c4, d4, and e5, which is very strong, very terrifying. And if we can hold our center somewhat together, our two knights are actually very strong, and sometimes we can claim this outpost or c5 outpost, and the e4 square is especially also very strong. So let's take a look at a second game here. So we also see d4, knight f6, bishop to g5, the Trompowsky, and the move e6 we're looking at. And we play this immediate e4, and our opponent plays again with bishop to e7. We play e5, knight to d5, and bishop takes on e7. Queen takes on e7, and again c4. So we're playing this big pawn variation with our strong center. And this time our opponent doesn't go for the queen to b4, but he goes for knight to b6. A little more passive, but the knight does hit the pawn, so we have to be careful that our bishop does not lose connection. Knight to c3, queen to b4 again, and queen to c2 was a possibility, but I actually wanted to play into this endgame again, so I played queen to b3. My opponent took a takes on b3, and even though these pawns look a little bit raw, they look a bit weird, being kind of square formation almost. We now have a strong rook on the a-file, and this clump of pawns is very strong. We're going to be able to use it to really squash black here. And our opponent goes wrong. He plays the move c6. I want to quickly mention as well that it's hard for black to find good moves here. Maybe it would have even been better to play a move like f6 here to undermine the center, but because a move like d6 allows knight to b5, threatening this fork, and after the king comes in to protect, we're still going to be able to win a pawn on the a file here. So this position is already very, very hard to defend for black. So my opponent played the move c6, which I don't really understand what exactly he is doing. He's maybe preparing the move d5, I guess. But again, we can play this move knight to e4, as we saw in last game, and we have two very beautiful outpost squares on c5 and d6 here. King to e7. He could have just castled as well, but it doesn't really make a difference. The king is not unsafe in the center. Knight to f3, a5, and here I played an idea which you can often see in the French as well, where the king actually is quite safe in the center, or otherwise he tucks himself away by manually castling, and we activate the rook another way. We play the move h4 with the idea to really just shove the pawn down the board and create a rook lift, which we can use to pressurize on the king side. That's an idea you often see in classical French positions, but in this position it works like a charm as well. We see a4, that move does not do anything, so I just ignore it. I play the move h5, just really trying to clamp down. If I get the chance, I will play the move h5. My opponent takes on b3, so I trade the rooks, and we see that we were not afraid of this because of this. The knights are looking kind of wrong next to each other on the edge of the board. That's just, it's a position that almost looks like Fischer random chess. And this pawn can easily be won back with either one of these knights coming to d2, and the pawn can be protected anyway. Rook to h3, f5, knight to d6, finally utilizing this outpost. This knight is just extremely strong here, and it just can't be touched because we traded off these dark square bishops. That's usually something in this variation that you're going to see very often, is these dark squares around the king are going to be weak because the dark square bishops have been traded off and our pawns are already nicely curved on dark squares. So my opponent played rook to g8, rook to g3, h6, or g6, and I can play h6 here. Mind that taking here is not bad either, but h6 is very strong. It fixes this weakness, and this weakness can be easily attacked with knight to g5. And we see b5. Yeah, what else to do? The bishop and the knights are just stuck here. Black has to do something. I can see knight to g5, rook h8, and knight takes on h7. A nice tactic to finish the game off. After rook takes, knight can take on c8. My opponent actually resigned in this position because, yeah, after rook takes on h7, knight takes on c8 is just very easily winning. You can see that there is really no other moves to do for black either. You can imagine that, yeah, we can just easily win this pawn back at any moment here, or with knight to d2. Taking here with the pawn does not really help because we can take back with the bishop, and the bishop is strong, is going to win this pawn eventually. Black really has nothing, so the resign was understandable. Now let's take a look at the last game. This game was played by Duda against Giri, 2019. d4, f6, knight f6, g5, and e6. We see the move e4 and the move h6. So as I mentioned, there is no other variation than to take. Queen takes, c3, and Giri strikes at the center with c5. So that's really the entire point of this variation. We have a nice center here, but black is going to get some counterplay against our center by pushing d5 and c5. And here we have to defend. Let me turn off the best move arrows. We have to defend our center, and if we can kind of hold our center together, we're going to be in a good position. Pawn takes, bishop b4 check, knight to c3, castles, bishop to d3. So we're see all these pieces are trying to keep our center together. If we can keep the center together, the knights can be strong. d6, castles, knight to c6, and bishop to b5. So we're getting in a kind of complex middle game. It's not really much to talk about the opening. The moves are all very natural. The middle games are complex, but really they can go both ways. So the engine says this position is roughly equal. Bishop takes on c3, b takes on c3, and bishop to d7. Rook to e1, rook ac8, and e5. This was inaccurate by Duda, but best move was queen a4, just putting pressure along these light squares. But the position is quite hard to play. D takes on e5, knight takes on e5, rook fd8. So of course you can't take here because if you take here, pawn hits the queen has to go back, and you'd lose the bishop on d7. So there's still some pressure here. Rook to d8. Now bishop takes on c6, bishop takes on c6, and rook e3. So Duda is still trying to attack, looking to improve these pieces, looking to use these diagonals like this. The queen to g4, the rook to g3, looking to attack. So Giri is just defending, rook to g3, queen to e7, and Duda played queen to c1. Yeah, it's obvious, it's kind of brutish what he's trying to do. Queen to g4 was actually the strongest move here, just threatening the mate. And you also have these attackers ready. You can start using the pawn to attack as well. So this is also a very direct threat, but the direct threat of queen to g4 was even stronger. So f6, knight to g4, that was a mistake. Just knight to f3 again was better. And h5. So Giri is defending very well, and he's actually taking the upper hand now, because there is this nice move where black can take and actually gets both rooks for the queen. This position, black is material is level in case of points, but black is a little bit better because the queen actually outshines the rooks. But Duda plays this position extremely well, actually. So he trades off the bishop here, so it's now queen against two rooks, and he utilizes the rooks excellently here. Let's just look at the Grandmaster technique. He shuffles his rooks around, and we're getting a repetition of moves, and the engine actually agrees that this is the best continuation for black. Very well played by Duda to just still hold a draw here, but his position was definitely a little bit better earlier. After queen to c1, his position could have been a little bit better if he played queen to g4. So this position is still slightly better for white because we have some mating threats and the knight is very well centralized. If we can manage to either trade all the pieces and play a good rook or a good knight versus bad bishop game, or we get some kind of attack maybe, white is slightly better here. So I hope that clarifies the theory a little bit more on this variation with the move e6. So as we saw, e4 is my preferred move order. If you like playing French positions, knight to d2 and e4, definitely go for it. It's just as good as e4 is. It's all about preparation, but we saw that after h6, you really have to take this pawn and play a position with the big center. And after the move bishop to e6, bishop to e7, we're going to be playing e4 or e5, and this position that we reach with the strong center is very nice to play. So I hope you enjoy, and I'll see you guys in the next theory section. Goodbye.